Okay. Hey, you know what? Well, let's tear the Band-Aid off right now. So let's go with the number one question. This is literally going to be the intro to the whole entire story. This is going to be the moment, and we're going to do a smash cut right as you're about to answer. Was he a samurai? Yes or no? Dynamite. Hey guys, how you doing? My name is Hero. This is Quoting with Strangers, and I have finally, for the love of everything that's good and great, found one of our special, and I do mean special guest on the program. If you don't know, by any stretch of the imagination, we have been talking about a video game that I've never played, but I've truly been interested in. And there's been a lot of talk about the origin stories, how this came to be. Well, I did some digging. I begged and pleaded, and this lovely, majestic individual across from me has done me the honor of blessing me with so much information and joy. Geoffrey Girard, thank you so much for coming to the show. Can we just give it a round of applause? Thank you. It's early, too. It's early.
It is early. You're welcome. Thank you for the invite. I said right before we got on, and I'll say it again, I have completely kept out of this. I haven't been involved. No one's coming at me about anything. There is nothing to be gained for me to do this. Nothing. However, your requests, as I said before, I checked out a bunch of your podcasts. You're really good, man. And this is no
Thank
BS.
You so
I'm
much.
not blowing smoke.
I
am here completely out of respect to you, to this group that you've put together. You legitimately put it, again, you're not just doing reaction videos. You put up some scandal and you're like, oh, and you say a couple things and you call it a day. You put in the work, you put in the time, you actually are looking at both sides of things and you talk about things, and I really respect that. It's really cool. It's great content. It's really important that we have such things online, and that's all. So I'm here out of respect to you in this show, and whatever emails are coming at me, or if I have to go into hiding or something like that after, so be it. But right now, you know what? Whatever happens, this is out of respect to you, sir, and let's do this.
I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for those kind words, honestly. And we'll get you part of the Hero Protection Fund. We're building up a legacy. We'll get you 3 free months. Absolutely, no problems. But for all you guys don't know, Geoffrey Girard is one of the authors of the very famous, dare we say infamous?
It is now.
It's and I'll snap and you'll see the book basically covering the origin of Yasuke and his coming of age story and what his ties were to Oda Nobunaga back in feudal Japan and what it goes into. But the reason why its implication is so important to us today is because it has become part of a different medium, and that medium is video games. And we know video games have an interesting strut line whenever you want to talk about it, whether it's coming from the developers or coming from the community. In this rare situation, they're both clashing, and they're clashing for different reasons, but it all sort of simulates and surrounds itself around Yasuke and his involvement in feudal Japan. So today, I just want to have a discussion about that. I'm not necessarily here to try and get some clickbait out of you, but I probably will just by the course of it. But I really want to gain a level of understanding and respect and sort of an adulation and appreciation that I probably would have never been able to have or get on my own, except from the eyes and ears of one of the authors. It starts off by saying, so just, thank you so much for that. And just starting up, I have a few questions here.
Yes, sir.
I'm over here starstruck by you because you just have so many accolades. Don't give me that. The humbleness in you is really starting to bother me because you really should be a bit bragging. I want you to just talk a little bit about your accolades and how and what makes you be able to speak on business about things like this.
Things like this. With accolades.
He's trying to be humble, y'all. Don't let him do it.
I have been a working writer since I was 16, 17 years old. I walked into the local newspaper and said, hey, I can write sports articles for you for, I think I was getting like $15 an article or something. Back when that, I was okay. So I drive around. I write sports articles for the local paper. I don't. I've been a paid working writer since I was 16, 17 years old. I've always loved writing. I have credentials. I have 3 degrees in English literature.
Okay.
Two in English literature, and then one master's in fine arts and creative writing. Of course, one got that. I've been teaching creative writing for over 20 years. I was in corporate PR and advertising for 10 years first, and then I'm like, yeah, I was supposed to be a writer and a teacher and stuff. So then I became that.
Okay.
And I've probably published it's over 20 books now. I've probably written 23, 20 of them have been published. I've done dozens of little proposals and like little side projects. And you probably see this too. The more successful you are, what's the language on this? I'm PG-13, right?
Yeah.
The more successful you are, the less shit you do actually gets to public.
Yeah.
Like it's like weird. Like you're always in these like meetings and discussions and like with big like movie stars and stuff, and you're talking to these important people and hey, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that, and you're like, and you do a bunch of work and it's like, yeah, that project fell through or that company got sold or and when you get started for the first 10 years, you're just like, you're putting out these little things, you're like, oh, something got published and something bigger got published, and now I got a real deal. And then you get to the point where it's like, I gotta say, probably half the stuff I work on is like really cool if it hits, but it doesn't hit. Like as you get further along your career, you're hunting for marlin now. You're hunting for marlin and you're fishing for marlin.
So definitely have the academic chops, but you're also a worldly man at that too. You've done your fair share of traveling. From a sense of travel and exposure. I know some people haven't gotten out of Wisconsin, and that's terrifying to hear. So as far as travel for you, what does the world out there look like to you?
Oh, geez, I love travel. So literally the entire time we're playing, I've got it's the closest. It is the closest thing to me. It's closer than my Gatorade or my cell phone right now. It's this I don't even know where I got that. It's some like secret Santa gift or something. But it's the globe. It's the closest thing to me. I love to travel. This summer I just did Croatia and Nicaragua.
Okay.
And so they're I'll use that one as a perfect example. You just made the face. Everyone's like, Nicaragua. I'm like, let's go. I'm like, let's do this. Like,
it's definitely not like on my top 10. So it's to hear.
It's sort of like, right. I'm like, I've already done this place and that place. And I brought my 2 grown sons, and they were like, yeah, okay. It is cliche. Cliches are cliches for a reason.
Yeah.
It couldn't have been a better trip. Let me highly recommend Nicaragua to everyone. Go vacation there. Have a blast. People could not have been more welcoming, nicer. The food is incredible. The things that we saw and did were incredible. What a wonderful place. I look forward to going back. But to your thing, I love to travel. I've been all over. I love Spain. I love Japan. Part of the reason why I took on the Yasuke project, I was just like, well, like I'm talking to my agent. I'm like, what do you think I'd have to go to, Japan to work on this? And he's like, we'll see. And I'm like, yeah, we'll see, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I got to go to Japan for about a month. And that was, you said you have your list, right? You got your list. It was number one. And please, Japan, I will apologize to you, or if I have to, or whatever, as this thing goes on today.
Yeah.
But it was number one on my list for 25, 30 years. It was always the place that was the most magical, different, a place that I never thought I'd get to, that I knew the buildings, the language, the food, the culture, the feel would just be different than anything I'd experienced in New Jersey, Ohio, whatever.
For you in particular, what made you want to write this book about Yasuke?
I just thought it was a cool story. Like at the time, I thought it was just a cool story. At the time, I'd written a bunch of, and sorry everyone, I'd written a bunch of fiction at that point. And that's actually not true. I'd written like 4.
No, you had 2 at least. I saw there was at least 2 I saw.
No, yeah, exactly. the pirate book, the Native American book,
Yeah.
the colonies book, the company went out of business. I got a really good book on the American colonies. The company went out of business. It's written. It's done. It's one of the ones that hasn't been published, but it's really good because I did so much research on it. So I did do history books. Now, are they creative nonfiction? And are we going to talk about what that word means today? Absolutely. So I had dabbled in the weird gray area, which we're going to live in today.
Yes.
Where fiction meets nonfiction and creativity and what actually happened in history sort of get all jumbled up and mixed up for both to teach, to entertain, and to get stories out there. So
Facts.
we will get into that. So I'd done. We'll forget the Jersey Devil one for now. I'm just from Jersey, so that was an important one for me to write.
Yes.
And I did one on pirates. I researched. It's funny. It's been years since I've talked about these particular books. I researched pirates for 6 months before I wrote a single word about pirates. I researched the Native American book. They're like, all right, what do you want to write next? These books are selling. What do you want to do next? I said, a book of Native Americans. I literally picked that topic because I didn't know anything about Native Americans. I felt like I was nearing 40 years old, an American, and I just felt like that's something based on the time frame I was raised. It was just something I didn't feel like I'd gotten a good education on Native Americans, and so I'm like, that's what I want to write about. Now I'm going to write it. It's a PG-13 book for kids mostly. I researched for 6-7 months before I wrote a single word. 50-60 books. I drove 4 hours. I made a mistake. I thought the guy was like an hour away. I drove 4 hours to meet an Indian chief out in Pennsylvania, of a tribe that has like 40 official members right now. But I did it, and it was those kinds of experiences. Like it was really important to me to I felt like it was a part of me that was undeveloped. It was a part of. I did not have that file cabinet. I did not have information about a group of people that I feel I should know more about, and so I that's what I did. So I'd written a couple of those. I had some success with fiction books. I had a couple of big books with Simon & Schuster, completely fictional Michael Crichton, Stephen King stuff. But they were successful, and they were good deals, and from that, my agent was like, all right, this guy can write. At this point, I could write. I published 60 short stories by that point, and a couple books, 4 or 5 books, and then this email landed, and it's like, hey, we have this guy. We have this professor in Japan. He's written this book. It's a little dry. He didn't wrote it as a professor would. He wrote it as a little 60-page history thing, and he published it in Japan, and it's doing really well. At the time, Japan was like, oh yeah, we love this. This is great. This is interesting. The book sold well in Japan. So they're like, we're thinking about bringing this book to America. It's doing so well in Japan. We'd like to bring it to America.
Can I stop you real quick, because maybe I didn't understand this. So if I'm hearing this correctly, there's 2 versions of the book. There is a academic version. An academic version.
It was only published in Japan. It's probably, and if I'm wrong on the page count, it's like 80 pages. It's 100 pages. It's 80.
Sure.
It's 100 pages. And it was published in Japan, and it sold really, really well. Multiple printings. It did really, really well. No one was.
And I'll let you into some of my own research insight into this. I found that copy, but couldn't believe that it was real, because it was so much different and written in a structure of a documentary, or not even documentary, an academic piece of work that was basically listing out items in real time of what was the sourcing for it, travel destinations, geospatial analysis of points, and dictionary. But in my mind, I wasn't sure if that was a real thing, but it does exist.
There is an original book that was published by Thomas. And so they want to bring it to America, and they want to make it like a book that people, they don't want some little academic thing that only 1,000 people read, or 100,000 people can read in Japan, for all I know. But they want to bring it to America and to make it bigger. Now we enter this thing called creative nonfiction, where you take a historical event.
Yes.
And you add the adjectives. I'm going to do for shorthand. We'll get into whether or not someone was a samurai or not later in this discussion, I'm sure.
Sure.
But in general, when you have a piece of history. If you go to the bookstore now, 90% of nonfiction is written in this style.
Yes.
It became very popular in the 50s and 60s. There's Truman Capote sitting right there looking at me. So you take a book like In Cold Blood. This murder happened. Here are the facts. But now a writer who loves words and adjectives and scenes gets a hold of this. And Capote does a ton of years of research and interviews the guys and becomes friends with the one guy. And he's out in Kansas talking to people for months and years and waiting for the thing to... But at the end of the day, you're going to have to fill in some blanks. You're going to have to add some adjectives. You're going to have to... How do I turn this into a story? Just like we all do. And it's like, oh, here come the excuses. Anytime we're telling story, like, hey, what did you do this weekend? You're going to leave some stuff out. You're going to change a couple adjectives. You're going to condense time. You're going to say, oh, my God, we were there for 3 hours. No, you weren't. You were there for 46 minutes. It felt like 3 hours. But you're now telling your story to your buddies. So, well, this is history. You can't be doing that.
Yeah.
I got it. Those are history books. Those have a different thing. History books, of course, have their own problems.
Yes.
What information makes it into them.
Yes.
What information is left out. You know, Woodrow Wilson's, he has a very famous biographer who apparently fell in love with Wilson and left things out that didn't make Wilson look good. Because he'd fallen in love with Wilson.
The idea.
At this point, he's just like, oh my God, what a great president, what a great human being.
Yeah.
And he's just like, except for these 3 letters right over
here. Hey, we're not going to let everybody vote. Just calm down. Put that pen down, okay?
We're going to set that right over there. So, history books, I get it. Anyhow, so that is the gray land in which I was brought in. Here is this history book. How do you make it back to our earlier conversation? How do you make this how do you make this pop? Like, what do we do? It's like, all right, well, we know dude landed. He came with the Jesuits. He was with the Jesuits. We know this.
Yes.
That's a different discussion. I mean, are we starting there yet?
Okay. You know what? Well, let's tear the Band-Aid off right now. So let's go with the number one question. This is literally going to be the intro to the whole entire story. This is going to be the moment, and we're going to do a smash cut right as you're about to answer. Was he a samurai? Yes or no?
Hey bro, I think I'm gonna head on in for the night. I'm kind of tired.
No problem. Get some rest.
Hey, didn't you work today?
12-hour shift.
And you went to the gym?
PR to 700 deadlift.
And you still got energy to do all this work? Where does the energy come from, bro?
I'm at my best when I have my zest, baby.
Okay, zest?
The Zest Super Berry Samba Green Tea comes packed with 135 milligrams of caffeine and L-theanine. That's how I stay focused for longer and stronger throughout the day with no crash. It's way better than coffee or any of those sugar-filled energy drinks out there. No GMO, gluten-free, and it won't stain your teeth.
Oh yeah, that sounds real good. Is this one right?
Yes, sir, that's the one. But my brother in Zest, I'm gonna need you to get your own Super Berry Samba Green Tea.
Selfish.
You mad, bro? Don't worry, I got you. Use my promotional code down below to get 20% off selected items and the subscriptions. That's Coding with Strangers, all one word. Put that in the checkout box and you'll be good to go. Thank you so much to Zest for the sponsorship.
I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't there. This is not some bullshit. See, banter. I don't know. You don't know. I wasn't there. You know what? There's 1,000 people who know that answer. They've all been dead for 500 years. So I don't know. I'm sorry to be all Gen X about this. But even if people wrote shit down 10 years after or 6 months after, they could be lying for all I know. I wasn't there. I wasn't. I've seen all the things.
Yes.
As I've said before, I've been completely kept out of this, and no one's come at me at all. It's recognized. Like,
it's crazy because your name is right next to him. That's how I found you.
And I love that you're the one guy who reached out. It's like, I think it's recognition that like, oh, he's the guy who added the adjectives. He writes thrillers and stuff. It's fine. He does some historical fiction or whatever. So whatever. I'm not the one out there pushing the story of Yasuke. Does a sword mean you're a samurai? I don't know. I know there's thousands of people, hundreds of people that say yes. Does a sword, do you get swords sometimes for winning a beauty contest? I've seen the videos recently. I wasn't tracking any of this stuff until you sort of reached out to me. I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is going on? Like, I don't pay attention to social media. So
I love how there's a part of me that the world will never understand how in 2 months me making one video blew my channel, and literally just me doing elementary research. Like, okay, here's the book. And as I started to read it, I got halfway through and I'll be like, okay, so there's an element of creative writing here. There is truth to it, but there's an element of creative writing. And it was like, okay, but this book was based off of something else. What was the source of this source of the source? And when I reached out to you, my sole objective was just to understand whether I was being crazy or not. Like, am I being crazy? Because when I said that, oh, I think he's a samurai, my reasoning for saying that was because I thought that was cool. Because seeing him as anything else holding a sword would be dumb. I'll be like, we're not going to call it the retainer of Assassin's Creed. Like, we're going to call it the samurai of Assassin's Creed. But like, I thought for myself, like, hero, am I standing on my soapbox here? Like, but then I think the thing that really cut to it was the discomfort that it was causing people to see other people just happy about the idea. I think about my comic book and how my character is a black woman, and there were black women who were upset that I was writing the story, and I was just like, I don't know what to say, but like, I have that much love and respect for her, and I consider her my creation. Like, this is the version of me that I really enjoy putting creative juices into. And some women understood that, some women didn't. But at the end of the day, I was welcoming to all of it. But I think there was never a situation where someone tried to take it from me and say that, no, you don't get to do this because you're not part of this. And I think that was the part where I became defensive. It was like, well, why can't I enjoy this for the sake of just it being art? It's just art. Like, it's not hurting anybody. It's not going to change a real history book if it's true. And anyone who takes it to heart will take it to heart. So like, to hear you come with this response is so magnificent, actually. Like,
wait, what was my response? What are you saying?
No, your response was, you don't know. And that's
admitting that I don't know.
Yeah.
I wrote a book. I think we were talking earlier. I did the Native American book.
Yes.
One of the stories is about the Native Americans meeting the Vikings. Mm-hmm. Vikings were over here in North America, your neck of the woods, right?
Yeah.
Up in the north. And so I'm like, oh, that's going to be such a cool story. All right, I'm going to do one of my Native American stories. It's them meeting the Vikings. So I need to nail down, when did the Vikings first get over here? I researched like crazy. I was so proud of myself. I paid like $25 to get like this technical 40-page white paper that had just been written by some leading scholar in when the Vikings came over here. So brand new, hot off the presses, 3-month-old, paid extra money to be a scholar, and I can't even understand 80% of what I'm reading, but I'm like, okay, I know when they came over here. Meanwhile, I'd reached out to the other, I'm not even making this up. This is how serious I took this stuff back in the day, and I still do, but so this is why it's like, I get a hold of the other leading expert on Native Americans in America. He contacts me, sort of like you. I reached out to him like, he's never going to reply to me. He reaches back, hey, let's talk. I'm like, oh my God. So now we're typing, this is text, this didn't even exist. This is, we're texting each other. And I wanted to brag. I'm like, yeah, I read the new paper by so and so, da 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 da. I'm just like, yeah, I'm not just some like fiction writer.
Yeah, I'm not some smug off the other. I just
like I'm putting in my time, man. And the guy's like, oh, Smith, that guy's an idiot. He's off by 300 years in text. And I just go, so I'm sitting in my little house in Southern Ohio. I have two of the leading experts. They have devoted their life to knowing when Vikings got here. One guy says this, one guy says 300 years later. And I'm sitting here in the middle like, cool, I just got to write a story. Like, what am I supposed, like, and then I found some quote later. It's like, if you show me 2 experts and I'll give you 3 facts or something, like,
yeah.
I'll give you 3 truths. Show me 2 experts, I'll show you 3 truths. It's like, guys, if you 2 can't sort it out, what the hell am I supposed to do? And the answer is, I'm going to write a story. It's cooler for me. It's better for the story. To your creative point, if I write it here, it's set in this time period. This is what I'm going to go. You two can't decide. I'm not fighting this out, man, because you're never going to decide. We don't even know what human beings got to North America. I was just recently listening people arguing about that and being off by, I don't know, 100 or more thousand years. So I'm like, whatever. It's not for me. I don't know about the sword thing. I'm not an expert in Japanese history. I do know that there are people who say that getting a sword in a house is proof of like you're the real deal, you're considered a samurai. And I have seen just recently, I have seen the people say that's utter nonsense. You'll get a sword for winning a sumo wrestling competition. And so I am sitting here respectful of both of those, thinking totally about Vikings and when they landed in North America. I don't know. I wasn't there. In this particular story, to your point, the African samurai is way cooler than the African guy who hung around Nobunaga. Now, I will say this. To my knowledge, 100%, I would swear, and to my knowledge, at no point was it like, yeah, I'm not really sure, but this is cooler, this will sell books. That was never hinted at, suggested, even brought up. From the very start of the project, I think Thomas like started this in 2007 or 9 or something ridiculous like that. He spoke with such reverence, he was so into this character. This human being is like being this awesome person who needed to sort of get out into the world. I never got a sense, and this is, God, what am I allowed to? We're 3-4 beers into it. We're hanging out in Kyoto. We're like, yeah, man, and we're talking about everything. And at no point was he like, now, really just doing this to make money, or I'm really just doing this to, like, nothing. If anything, he just got more into it. He's just like, this guy's amazing. We got to get this story out. This is fantastic. We need to bring this guy to life. And the way you bring this guy to life is you take the 4 or 5 sentences that are actually written about him, and you fill in as many blanks as you can.
You can.
I don't know who you had breakfast with today, but let's say you had a whatever with I don't know, whatever. Give me a name. Susan. And I don't know what you had for breakfast, but I know what Susan had for breakfast. And she says how she shared breakfast with the people she was with. I'm like, okay. I can describe what you had for breakfast. And that's what we started. We even had, we called it, now I'm blabbling, but it's like gold, silver, and like bronze level. Like, okay, we know this. We know he arrived in this date. He was with the Jesuits. He showed up in this date. I know where he was in this date. I know where he was. I know the thing with, we know he met Nobunaga on this date.
Yes.
We know he was in this town. We know there was a riot of some kind. We know what. All right, so now you start filling in. Okay, if there's a riot, you enter the town here. You ended in the church.
Yes.
We went to Kyoto.
Yeah.
We have maps. We have pictures. We walked Kyoto. Became a scene where he smashes through the wall. I don't know if he smashed through. I don't. Was the scene smashing through the wall? Sure. But if I'm being chased by 1,000 people that are like freaking out because they're seeing a black guy for the first time, I would probably run through a wall.
Oh, too.
And
yes.
And that was we were walking through Kyoto and we looked and it was one of these rice. We saw it was like this wall.
Yeah.
And Thomas and I were looking at it like we can literally see the church and we're looking at it. I'm like, I'd go right through that wall. You know what I mean? If I were 6 feet tall and running for my life, I would plow right through that.
There's nothing that would stop me. So okay, then I have to go into. Let's lead into what do you make of the controversy? Can I ask the question? Has anybody from Ubisoft reached out to you for comment?
Ever 100% never. I did not even know. The first time I heard about the game was an art teacher who I work with. He sent me a text like, "Yo, man, your guy Yasuke is going to be in the new Assassin's Creed game." I'm like, "Cool," and then I went on with my life. Like that was it. I didn't give it another thought. Not at all. I've not been in contact with them before, after, since. Did not even know he was going to be in the game until, like I said, I just got that text.
So then, what do you make of this controversy? Like,
I am aware of all sides, and I am understanding and appreciative, and not even just saying this like tactfully. I'm truly appreciative of why man, there are like 4 or 5 different reasons to be mad. So I get it. Like I get it. Should I go through them and prove that I sort of understand?
No, please, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, let's start. I think I want to start with like the Japanese, and I don't want to mispronounce Nippon and Nihon, so I'll just say Japan. So East Asians and Japanese are like, oh my God, you're going to set a storyline of this very popular franchise. You're actually going to set it in Japan. That is awesome. We were so excited. This is going to be great. And apparently there are a lot of mistakes.
With the reefs, the ponds, the lanterns, yeah, the flags being stolen.
Yeah, anachronisms and stuff like that. Just like, exactly. It's like, that doesn't even happen for another 300 years. And, there's just stuff wrong with the art. There's just stuff wrong.
Yes.
And then we'll get into the creative and how much can you bend stuff to have a quote unquote
Sure.
fun game. But I think there are millions of people, no offense, video games are played a little bit more than books are read. So,
facts.
So the books come out and everyone's like, all right, cool, fine. And the video game, it just hits harder. There's more people that are interested in video games. And you're like, wait a second, I wanted to play with my heritage. I wanted to play in my land, my people. I was really excited about this. I was really proud. This is cool. Like, we're really going to shine here. And then there are all these mistakes. And one of the mistakes is the main character is Yasuke. So I'm a Japanese person, or an East Asian person, or I could be any person. I could be some pasty white, I don't know, Mormon guy somewhere. And I'm just
Shout
like,
out Utah.
I know you. And I finally get to play a cool character in Japan, and I'm gonna play the tall black guy. Like wait a second, I'm the tall bisexual black guy. Like there are millions of samurai you could have gone. Like, you can't make him one of 9 characters I can choose, which that's a different discussion. It's easy for me to take over a video game company. It's like, just make him one of 9 characters that you can play. It's like, that's the guy you're going with. So I can understand why, for gamers who are very excited about seeing East Asian characters doing cool stuff, they're like, whoa, why, what is this? Like, why this? And then why all these other mistakes? But this is an easy one. Like, I'm going to point to, this is an easy one I can point at. Like, what are you guys doing here, man? Like, what is your goal? I totally get that group. Other groups that I totally get. I totally get people that think that, like, oh, okay, here we go. We're cashing in on the black guy. Bunch of white writers, and they're gonna write this book. And we were writing the book in 2016, 2017. Does that justify anything? Probably not. Do I know more in 2024 than I did in 2016? Yes. The world has changed a lot. There have been a lot of discussions that have happened since. I think we got in just under the wire kind of thing. Like, by the time the book came out, I remember I presented it and locally, there's like a book event or whatever, and a ton of my students were there. And I literally turned it into, and they're all looking at me like, man, we're getting deep. I literally turned it into a conversation of, I admitted, I'm like, maybe I wasn't the one to write this book. Because these were young. So when the book came up, 2019. So like I said, it's like we just missed it. But in 2019, I don't know if I'd be the writer that they would have selected to work with Thomas on the book. I said this to my students. I said, look, we are now in a serious discussion, which should have maybe happened 50 years ago or 500 years ago, but we're having it now on to your point, who's allowed to tell whose story? Yeah. Should you be telling stories about women? Like, you're not one. And so can you really capture the story? Like, these are discussions that are happening now. So I'm telling this to a bunch of young guys, and they're looking at me. I said, this is I'm not African. I'm not I'm not. So, like, for me to tell an African story in Japan, I can tell, like, is it not my story to tell? Anyhow, no answers were gained that night, and maybe there's a resounding, no, it is not. Fine. But those discussions were just really like, in 2019.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think in 2024, the publisher would be like, no, we're going to find someone else to help write this.
No, you're absolutely right. And I do think there is that in itself is a very sad thing to come to realize, because the story in itself, what I would beg the question, what would someone stand to gain, if anything, from the 5 or 6 lines we have about Yasuke? What could they have attributed or articulate? Maybe they would be able to denote, like, whether his hair was a certain type of way that you probably wouldn't be able to describe to it. Like, it's just these are minuscule things that in the grand scale of the thing, they do scale to the level of importance when you come into creative mind. But I do believe that taking the right, or not even acknowledging other people of different stance, not having perspective on cultures or other aspects of culture is a terrible thing. It takes from the situation. Some of the Masahiro Sakurai wasn't he is in a yellow furry ball, or he's not a pink round ball. He's the creator of Smash Brothers. He brought those ideas together. Hawata is a Japanese man talking about an Italian plumber in New York, and we wouldn't have the Jumpman without it. So, like, I do believe there is space and opportunity for people who are not from a certain demographic or culture to be able to speak on things. I think the problem is intention. Are your intentions good? And even if your intention is malice, does it come with a certain level of authority on the topic? Because there are people of malice who want to tell a negative story about negative people and make sure you understand it. Yeah. So I hear those stories, and it makes me wonder, like, what it takes to put yourself out there. But I cringe at the idea that you might not have been able to write this story today.
Or not, or maybe, I recently, it was maybe a year or two ago, it was a great one. Black author was writing the memoir of her ancestor. Really interesting guy, and I won't get into specifics or whatever. Really interesting guy. So, and I got invited to get involved in that, and it was an incredible 3 months. I mean, the project in it, I don't know what became of it, but it was a great 3 months, and. Again, maybe I haven't taught myself yet to be like, but maybe I shouldn't do that. But I got paired with this woman. We talked. We hit it off. She liked my writing. I loved her story. The story of her ancestor was so fascinating. Again, it was like a world. He was doing things. He was doing things in a different time, from a different mindset, with different conditions than I'm currently living in, and so. That's where it gets sad.
That's a level of isolation. And we talked about how creatives yearn for creative minds to be able to bounce ideas off of other creative people and fill our cups. Hearing someone talk with excitement about their project fills our cup. And to know that
it was a life-changing 3 months working on that project. Now, could I have read that? Could I buy the book? Someone else wrote it, and I buy it. I'm like, oh yeah, I learned a little bit. But as far as getting your hands in the nitty-gritty and really digging and doing the research and reading handwritten letters by this guy, like, it was a life-changing 3 months, which I never would have gotten had. It's like, well, you're not allowed to write that. You stay in your little lane. And it's just like, all right, and that's fine. And I do all sorts of books in my life. I usually pick books. I usually pick projects that are just not in my wheelhouse, kind of thing. It's like,
assuming we know so little about him, why do you think so many people are just resistant to even learning about him, or getting an idea of who this person was, or what it was possible for him to be? Why do you think there was so much of a push about him? Because I get the perspective of, hey, I'm in feudal Japan with Assassin's Creed, one of the biggest games in the world. Why give us this character? And shout out, Naue is in the game, but
that's like no one's talking about her. She's fine. Fight wanting this guy to be a samurai. Again, not knowing if he is or not. I just watched something right before I got on and talked to you, because I'm trying to get caught up on all this stuff. Like I said, I've sort of like skated. I was sort of out of it. Someone like, he was a retainer. There's no way. I'm like, he was mocking the fact that Yasuke would know how to use weapons.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden I do go into Tom's mode a little bit. I'm like, time out. They were not grabbing slaves to carry stuff in teacups and food. You
Yeah.
don't need slaves for that. Slaves are being used for wars in India.
Mm-hmm.
That's how Yasuke, wherever he came from, whatever his name really was, that's where
He
if
learned.
Africans were getting to China, unless obviously could he have been a sailor or something like that? This guy wasn't. He was picked up by the Jesuits. So he wasn't a sailor or a craftsman or anything like that, who also could have gotten over. If his background, which it seems to be based on everything the Jesuits have written, was slavery first, the slaves were for war. They weren't for carrying stuff. They weren't for crops. They were for the wars that were in India. Every 2 minutes there was someone fighting somebody, and they're like, "Yo, we need soldiers. Let's go to that continent, right over there, and we'll grab some folk."
Yep.
So he'd have known how to fight. He'd have known how to fight. He'd have been trained how to fight. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made it from India to.
A lot of people take for a lot, and it comes from the rudimentary or the lack thereof real spatial knowledge. Because I'm from West Africa,
Okay.
but I'm Nigerian. But I moved to America when I was like 15. So like for me, I went to Morocco, where a lot of people don't know. If you're Shohei Ohtani, you could hit a baseball into another country if you really wanted to. So like a lot of people don't understand that like. On those docks, they doubled as not only import exports, but training facilities where a vast majority of people would do their formal training and then be shipped out for war. That was usually where a lot of that came from. And even on the West. And they always talk about, the triangle trade, but there was one port of entry that was specifically made for training because Lagos, or the western coast, is a swampland. So basically, even just surviving out there, it in itself will make you harden, because they need to know if you can make the journey one and also survive the terrain once upon arrival, because it's swampland also on the edge of their coast. So like it's so fascinating to like, and I learned all of this while researching about this, like while picking up on this. So like it just branched my learning. And a lot of people have taken my take to be like, oh, I'm just calling everyone racist because I want to see a black guy. I'm like, guys, I can't help you if that's what your thoughts are. But like, my first words were very honest. I've never played an Assassin's Creed game, and yes, I am interested because I saw a samurai that was 6 foot. I'm a 6'5" black guy with long hair, just like Yasuke. So in my mind, I'm like, this is amazing, but people miss the point where it's representation. And while I understand that there's missing representation, there was a point of reference where someone was talking about, well, why didn't they make the game for Ghost of Tsushima? And I was like, one thing that Americans definitely don't do well is copycat, because we have Call of Duty and we have Battlefield and we have Treyarch, Apex, all of these games. Trust me, one always rises to the top. You have to find a way of elevating and skipping yourself. And Americans don't like that repetitive tonation. I think a lot of my real sincere empathy goes to people who wanted to see a story in their land about themselves. But I've often said to myself, and this is probably where I say, if you can't smile for someone else's representation, then maybe you didn't really want representation. You wanted separation. And I've often said, like, as a black man, I often have to come to the aid and defense of a lot of groups that don't get representation or are mistreated, because I inherently know what it's like to be mistreated. So I have a moral obligation to come to their aid. But if someone doesn't necessarily have that in their heart, it makes me kind of stunned. Like, why come you're so upset at just learning about this opportunity? Or learning about this out too. But I think the 2 points that you made at the beginning are outstanding, whereas there are people who are seeking representation, and when you only have so much space and room to get this opportunity, so many places to get greenlit opportunities, we'll only be able to go to feudal Japan one time. Assassin's Creed isn't very fond of going to the same duplicate places at the same time, so I totally get that aspect, but I do feel like there comes a time and place where we have to cheer for the people who made it and hope for our time to come, or even advocate for our time to come afterwards. I totally get it that I'm biased here as a black guy, but like,
no, that's great. I just I wish the game had 10 characters. Again, you named 2 characters. I think that alone we wouldn't be having this discussion. Just make him one of the 10 characters. Done. But I mean, that's easy for me to say. I'm Left 4 Dead. I get a choice of 4 characters.
Yeah, I think the Left 4 Dead is really giving you hope out there, and I appreciate that.
How about World of Warcraft? I have a choice of 1,000 characters.
1,000 characters.
Like, how hard is it? Just like, yo, you design your person. What do they look like? I get it. It's a cool storyline, so they want to work it in there. But anyhow,
talk a little bit about like something that you found out about Yasuke after the book came out. Like, now, like, it's been a couple years, and you're like, this is something that was never in the book, or if something that.
Jeez, the funny answer would be like, I never knew that getting a samurai sword didn't make you a samurai, or getting a sword didn't make you a samurai. Like, you know what you know. Like, if I have an expert who's like, hey, this is the case, and you have books that saying this, and you're like, okay, well, what am I going to argue with it? Someone else argues with it, it's fine. So, I guess I did not know. I did not know that. It's certainly. The characters certainly exploded in the last 4 or 5 years. Again, all the talk of the different, the Netflix shows and the different movies that are in possible in production. And since that book came out, and this isn't like, oh, so I wash my hands of it and I'm not responsible for any of this. I've worked on 15, 16, 20 other projects. Like, I have not kept up to date on the latest and greatest Yasuke. Again, you reached out to me. I think, an editor or an agent or a co-writer reached out to me maybe a couple months ago, like, hey, man, is everything cool? I'm like, yeah, what are you talking about? Because until now, because I'm not on social media. And I do think people recognize, like, oh, he's the guy who added the adjectives, whatever. But I'm not on social media. I'm not tracking it. So I haven't really been keeping up on the latest and greatest news on Yasuke. It has been fun to see, but believe me, I watched a couple episodes of the Netflix, the animated thing on Netflix. I had fun watching that, and I didn't watch it with any sort of like, why aren't I getting a check for that? Or like, I didn't even care. I'm just like, oh, cool. Someone's like, because at the end of the day, he is just this historical figure. We have 4 lines of information, and this gets to the creative thing. What someone now does and runs with that. You don't want to do it in a way that you offend an entire civilization of people, or that you don't want to, you're using this guy or using his history or anything like that. I don't think you want to do that. But I think, like many, many, many characters, I think he's going to be used in different ways. Even using that verb that used is problematic, I suppose. But he's going to be reimagined and processed in different ways. One way or the other, this human being existed. He certainly had an interesting journey getting over to Japan. We don't know what happened after. Netflix gets creative. The movies are going to have to get creative, and I hope they do. There's going to be a lot of I don't knows. I don't know about Kennedy or 9/11 or what's going to happen in 2 weeks. And you don't
have the lottery numbers. You don't have none of that.
I don't have any of that. These are things that I don't know. These are things that happened 3 years ago, and we're still like. Oh, he said this, and we're trying to piece together stuff that happened 500 years ago.
Facts.
Trying to fill in the gaps. I don't know. I don't know if that even answered the question. Here's what I will say. My big takeaway from writing that book and after the book is just how small freaking world is. It's so small. We forget it. We're all very protective of our histories and our this and our that. Well, you can't say that, and we're that, and we're and we should, and people should be. People should be. But the more you read, and the more you study, you realize we were in each other's business thousands and thousands of years ago.
We've always been
all hanging, and I know there's something really cool about it. I think the more those kinds of stories are told, I think we're gonna be better off, man. We'll get to Star Trek someday.
No, hopefully, beam me up, please.
Yeah.
I think. And I really enjoyed this conversation because there's 2 things that happened here that I didn't expect, but I'm exactly happy for it. I spoke with someone who spent years writing this book, and then spent even more time learning and talking about it than I have. And to hear that you can definitively say, I don't know. I think that's the greatest takeaway I've taken away from this. It's okay not to know the answer, but what's more important is what did you gain from the journey. the stories that we've gained from this. The fact of the matter is that from Yasuke, breathed a channel for me, a semblance of understanding, and the ability for me to reach out to a perfect stranger and ask their opinion. I don't take that for granted at all. I think this has been a wonderful conversation, and it's been enlightening to me, because too often in life we do stay in our echo chambers, and I think if anything, you've reminded us it's okay to ask questions. It's okay not to know the answer. It's okay not even to be okay with said answers, but you just have to be willing to hear someone out. So I greatly appreciate that. Is there any books or anything you're working on that might be being published you want to send a little?
Not anything. You know what? I'll jump on what you were just saying, because that is the one thing that I would promote too, and that's me being a teacher and a writer and a lifelong learner and all that kind of nonsense. But to your point, just keep reading and learning, man. Keep digging. All of you. You be mad about this. Be mad about something. I'm going to be mad about something later today. I'm sure. I'm like, oh, what is this nonsense? I get it. I get it totally. But just keep digging. And find your right answer. If you get the right one, you're like, this is 100% cool, awesome. I'm very happy for you. In the meantime, to your point, like, enjoy the journey. I've enjoyed our encounter today. Like, I've enjoyed talking to you. Again, maybe I'll get crap later, and I'll be like, come on, hero, what'd you set me up for? But
please, nobody said it, dude.
No. Even that, it'll be an experience, and I invite everyone, just keep. I like these discussions. I liked even some of the stuff I was watching. People like, there's no way sword. This person says this and this. I'm like, awesome. Some dude you spent hours like figuring out.
There was a guy that measured the swords, and he was like, this is a ceremony sword. This is a battle sword. There's two. And in my mind, I was like, good God, there's two types of swords you can get. He's like, technically with a ceremony sword, if you ever unsheath it in the sense to draw blood, it's been dishonored and you have to return it. I was like, what?
No, it's amazing. Good. I'm so glad that's out there. Everyone, just keep learning, keep reading. Be willing to admit that when sometimes you're like, no, it's what do you do? We work with the best information we have. That time, right?
Yeah.
This is my understanding of the truth right now. I've worked on it for 2 years. We're going.
Facts. I'm a small YouTuber now, but if this blows away, I definitely want to be able to say like, hey, look.
Fantastic.
No. Hey, look. Some YouTubers out here buying like Ferraris and stuff, like Lamborghinis. I'm gonna come pick you up one day, and you're gonna be.
I said you're willing to drive 2 hours, so I'm probably about 3 hours.
I've driven further for women that didn't even like me, so I could do it.
We'll meet in Indiana somewhere. We'll get a burger.
But first and foremost, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was an amazing opportunity to talk about Yasuke, controversy, learning, growth, ideas, and what it really means to be able to stand on your own. Is there any final thoughts you want to leave the strangers with? Anything?
I think I already gave the one. Like I said, just keep reading, keep learning, keep creating. You guys keep creating. Again, not everything you do. Everyone's not going to love everything you do, and maybe you'll get some stuff wrong. You'll get some stuff right. But to your point, intentions, which you can never prove to the public, you can never prove to anyone. Mm-hmm. If your intentions are good, man, just create good art, keep learning. We're going to be all right, man. We're going to get there.
Excellent. Well, I greatly appreciate you all. Thank you so much. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Take care of yourself, but, we'll see you guys February 14th when the game drops. Hopefully you guys are enjoying yourself with that, and we'll get more content out to you in the meantime. I love your faces, all right?